What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin from Kevin's Corner. Want to share a few thoughts about what happened in Florida. It was horrible for the community, for the families that were affected, for the nation, and it was totally just unnecessary. No one can really figure out what drives someone to just snap and feel like I'm going to take it out on innocent victims. And I know as human beings, we try to process that. We try to figure things out and say, you know what, there got to be a reason for it. Sometimes you just have to say, people are crazy. And when you look at acts like that, it's usually driven by one of two things: either some twisted ideology, whether it be politically or religiously motivated, or the person is just psychotic. Somewhere along the line, they've snapped and they feel that this is something that either will relieve the pressure, um, and they just do something like this, maybe for glory, maybe for revenge. Who knows? And we will drive ourselves crazy, I think, trying to figure it out. I know they're going to take some time with this young man because he's going to be like a prototype. You know, normally people they choose to go out either by suicide or death by police, but apparently he wasn't too crazy because he didn't kill himself. But nonetheless, what I hope that we don't misplace blame, first of all. And what I mean by that is, of course, we know that there are a lot of politicians that have been waiting for something like this to happen to push their agenda again. And that makes me so upset because when they attack gun laws, when they go after guns, to me, there's something behind that. It's not sincere. And the reason I say that is because the last couple of days, you know, you've been hearing all of the politicians get on TV and when is something going to be done, blah, blah, blah. But if they really cared about addressing gun laws, then they should equally care about addressing immigration laws, illegal immigration laws. See, when someone, and this is how you always know that this is a different or a hidden agenda by the Democrats or even Republicans that might support stricter gun laws. And I'm going to get into that in a second. But first thing I want to do is dismiss the whole argument that we're pushing for stricter gun laws because we need to protect American citizens from things like this. I'll get into that in a second. But if they were so concerned about situations that pop up like this and lead to many people getting killed, and the first thing they do is say, let's address the problem. Why isn't Congress fixing the problem? Why isn't Congress addressing the gun laws? People are dying. But yet when we bring up those same issues with, say, illegal immigration and the broken immigration laws and some of the immigrants that have committed crimes and for whatever reason were not deported and let back into the country and wound up killing Americans, for some reason, those same politicians don't push for stricter immigration laws. They don't come out of nowhere and grab the mic and say, you know what? Americans are dying. When are we going to address this law? When are we going to put together some stricter immigration laws? When are we going to make some barriers to keep these people from coming in? So you know then that their outcry is not genuine. Now, the people's outcry is genuine. And I know that regular citizens who maybe are emotional when things like this happen and anger arises, they're not thinking straight. When you look at the current situation that America is in with weapons, there's several reasons why I think that it would be futile to try to increase stricter gun laws. First things first, a lot of people think, okay, well, we need to have something stronger when it comes to psychological evaluations. But problem with that is if they don't have a prior psychological evaluation that they bring and lay it down there like this, then you don't know if they're crazy or not. Oftentimes we find out people are crazy when they do things like what this kid did. And like I said, what he did was so selfish. He's not even thinking about the stain that will have on his family for generations. When someone can't get at the person that committed it, oftentimes that blame will be put on parents. The stigma I mean, there are kids right now of people who committed heinous crimes that they just had to change their last name because it's hard for people who've been hurt and injured to just dismiss that you're connected to that person somehow. So when people do things like this, they're not thinking. And, so for this kid to commit this type of crime, and then people say, well, you know what? He was mentally disturbed. Well, if he didn't have a record of this, then he went through the same process that everybody else goes through, and he passed. So now when people say, well, we need to have a mental exam, then the question becomes, first of all, who's going to pay for that? Secondly, how long would that process take? Thirdly, what mental illnesses will disqualify people? Would ADHD disqualify someone? What about a lower IQ? And those tests could be biased. What would prevent people who pass this legislation or come up with these laws from discriminating against people that they might feel would fall under the category of a mental illness, just to keep a group of people from obtaining weapons? So you have a lot of factors there outside of the obvious, meaning I have been diagnosed prior to submitting my application to get a gun. So I don't think that that's the solution. Secondly, if it's up to me, I would go back in time and get rid of all the guns. But we're dealing with a reality here. Guns are in America, millions of them, AR-15s and other guns. And to try to get Americans to willfully submit and give up their weapons could lead to a problem, because whenever the Democrats or politicians start pushing for legislation that rolls back some of the citizens' rights, my antennas always go up and I say, is this just the beginning of something else? Is this just a door to get in and push further legislation? And that's across the board. Whenever they start talking about hate speech and we need to really invoke some laws that might address hate speech, I'm going, yeah, you're saying that now, and you are preying upon people's emotions that might feel like, oh yeah, somebody said something bad to me and it hurt my feelings, so I support this law. But what people don't get is there's another agenda. So they might come in on the premise of, you can't call gay and lesbian people blank, 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 or you can't, promote this type of violence or whatever. But then later on, it's you can't disagree with anything that the government says, or you can't disagree with the liberal views feel and say. So there's always another agenda when it comes down to that, because if it was just about saving lives, if it was just about stricter gun laws, then you would have to tell me exactly how, by increasing stricter gun laws, that this will solve the problem. Because let's be real, crazy will find a way. Evil will find a way to get it done. So now what you're doing is you're saying, let's go ahead and penalize all of the law-abiding, sane citizens that can have a gun, whether it's an AR, whether it's a rifle, pistol, whatever, can have a gun, control themselves, and use it for good. But you're not really getting your will done when it comes to solving the major issue. Because when people are crazy, people have strange ideology, like I'm going to kill in the name of whatever, or I feel like that my political views make me have to take it out on a group of people, whatever motivates them, I got a gut feeling they don't care about gun laws. They don't care about safe zones, gun-free zones. In fact, that only encourages them to seek out places that don't have any resistance. When you look at the nature of someone that wants to do this, they pick vulnerable places. It's easy to shoot people that are scared, afraid, and running. And me as a gun owner myself, as an American citizen, I will feel so disabled to be hiding somewhere, hearing somebody walk around shooting people, and I have nothing to defend myself because I obeyed the law and said, okay, this place said I can't bring my gun in. I obeyed the law, but obviously this murderer right here looked and said, great, that sign gives me the green light. That sign actually makes me know that I can at least have about 10 to 12 minutes of just shooting fish in the barrel before somebody stopped me. And so you put restrictions on law-abiding citizens, but yet empower the criminals, empower people that are insane and might snap. And so the reason hunting is fun and exciting for a lot of people is because the animals don't shoot back. The animals aren't charging. The men that hunt go out with the guns and they say, man, I'm holding the power. I get to shoot the animal. The animal's not shooting back at me. But I think it would be a different story if they went hunting and lions start shooting back at them and deer start shooting back at them. It wouldn't be so much fun. They wouldn't have the confidence that they have when they go hunting because they're the only ones with the weapon to kill. And it's the same thing with these people who snap. Their glory is taken away if they don't accomplish their goal and objective. If you think, man, I'm going to go in here and yeah, I might get killed, but I'm going to go down in history for killing X amount of people. And you walk in there and you shoot maybe one or two people and then they just take you away. Pow, 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 pow. After a while, people will start getting a hint. Like this, I'm dying for nothing. I'm getting no glory. I'm looking stupid. Even though ultimately, if you do something like that, you still are stupid and you are dying for nothing. But you want to take away any incentive for them to do that. And by restricting guns, it doesn't address the problem. So once again, it goes back to why? Why are politicians pushing heavily for gun control? And I heard people on TV earlier today, one guy was talking about just simply confiscating all the guns. Now, can you imagine what would happen if the government said, you know what, we're going to go door to door, forcing people to give up their guns. Now, let me tell you, this is how you expose the garbage of politicians. They say that it is impossible to deport millions of illegal aliens, 12 million or however many it is, but yet would make a suggestion about how we can confiscate millions of guns. Like nobody's going to hide anywhere. Like people going to willfully just come out and say, well, here you go. I got a gut feeling that will raise a lot of people's antennas if the government said, we're going to start knocking on doors and we just trust that you're going to surrender your weapon. I think that'd make a real awkward situation. And I'm being nice when I say that. So when it comes to the type of weapon that they're trying to ban, the AR-15, we know that guns, and I know this is a cliche, they do not just jump into a car, drive somewhere, and kill a lot of people. And if a person is hell-bent on doing something like that, they will break the law to get those type of guns, whether they have to get them off the streets, whether they have to steal something like that, because they are at the point of no return. Only people that will say, I'm not going to do that, are the law-abiding citizens. But what I do worry about is a day where if our government, God forbid, ever just decide to become a tyrannical type government, now the citizens, if they don't agree with that, they're outmatched. You might as well not even allow citizens to own weapons if all they have is handguns and say the military are using automatic weapons. At least it gives the citizens a chance to really stage a revolt if the government, God forbid, ever try to become tyrannical over the people. Now, if you think that that's not possible, I think you might be delusional, considering a lot of the rhetoric, and I hate to say this, but from the left. I know they try to make it seem like they're very liberal, but a lot of what they're talking about falls into the category of socialism. It kind of suppresses free speech. It's always attacking some type of civil liberty. And that's the thing that always makes me go, It's funny how they are very casual with some laws, like illegal immigration, that also can contribute to deaths of Americans. And when you add it up, it's more than just these random killings, because these killings by legal immigrants that are violent, these things go on throughout a whole year and they can pile up, and so if they're not just as upset and ready for all type of legislation concerning those laws, then why are they concerned about gun laws? So it always is another hidden agenda when it comes to that. So I suggest instead of having an emotional, impulsive reaction, that's what a lot of politicians prey on, especially the Democrats, unfortunately. They are masters of chaos and fear. The, the way that you get a group of people or a society to willfully surrender things, their civil rights, is to cause panic, to cause fear. And it makes people go, I'm so worried about my own protection and safety that I'm willing to give up some of my rights for what appears to be safety or protection. Perfect example. When 9/11 took place, everybody was like, whoa, to keep terrorism from happening, if we have to say the CIA or the FBI or all of them, any of them, need to surveil people, then by all means, do what you got to do. Therefore, there was no resistance. There was no logical, practical thought about it because all you're focusing on is, I don't want something like this to happen to me, my family, or my loved ones. Then you look at things like gun laws or freedom of speech. When you put into a person's mind, a group of people, that, man, all of your rights, you're being attacked constantly. And all we need to do to solve this is to just pass some legislation that would cause people to think before they talk. Those people, out of fear, out of hurt, out of whatever emotion, will say, that sounds good to me. Not realizing that at some point it will come back and bite them in the butt. And it's the same thing with gun laws. I know right after a situation like this, the first go-to is like, man, we need to tighten up gun laws. But by doing that, is that opening the door for legislation to go too far? Is that fulfilling the hidden agenda of certain politicians that might see an end game to restricting gun laws and might want to take it further than just an AR or whatever? So now what you have to do is say, okay, if we can't stop, if we can't legislate evil out of our society, because that's not going to happen. We're not going to collect millions of guns. You can't legislate evil out of a person's heart and out of their mind. So all you can do is do practical things like put safeguards in. Now the guns are here, the monkey's out the bag. We're not collecting all the guns. That's not going to happen. So now how do you deal with the situation? I think a practical solution would be, okay, just like we got airport police, just like we have campus police that are oftentimes funded by either the government or the state organization, every state should have school police. And they should have their own district. They should have their own training, hiring, all of that stuff. And their police officers should only be restricted to schools. They place officers. It's funded by either the state or the local area. And based on the size of the school, that determines how many officers are placed there. They're trained. But then the second layer, I would suggest that they have at least 5 willful, either staff, teachers, or whoever, that are completely concealed. Only person knows that they have the weapons is the police officers in the building and the principal. Other than that, no one knows that these people have weapons. So therefore, you got several layers of protection. You have one, if you create this type of police facility or station or whatever, or force, you're providing jobs, and not only that, by giving certain staff the ability to conceal carry, nobody knows, it would even lessen the chance of somebody coming in knowing that we have someone in here that I don't know, can't identify, that might shoot me before I even get several shots off. So you got multiple layers of protection. That's outside of putting probably some metal detectors in going through the door. Now, I hate to make kids feel like they're living in, some type of camp, concentration camp or something, but it's better than the alternative. There used to be a time where they used to only have metal detectors on a lot of inner city black schools, but it seems like inner city black schools now are safer than some of the suburban schools, because when you look at a lot of black kids, most of the time, they don't do mass killings. I've not heard of one. Usually, if you get shot in those type of schools, it's by accident. They were shooting at one particular person. You just happen to get in the way. But when you look at mass shootings, that's something that we've been seeing a lot of in the suburbs and so on and so forth. So that means they probably need to bring in metal detectors there, along with their own private police department that is placed statewide in the schools, multiple cops based on the size, and then training several employees with how to use the weapon, what to do, and they have concealed carry. Because having areas with gun-free zones and vulnerable people like kids, that's just only inviting someone to come in and try to invoke their will upon the weak, the prey, and so on and so forth. So that's not going to cut it. And trying to invoke stricter gun laws, that's not going to cut it as well. That's not solving the problem. The guns are not the things that are attacking people. It is crazy people, whether that is motivated by crazy ideology or by just mental illness. But nonetheless, that is not something that you can just say, you know what, we have the ability to legislate out evil. It will always be here, unfortunately. So when it rears its ugly head, you have to adjust to the behavior, not the weapon. I mean, people blow up stuff with bombs. You don't blame the bombs. They say the bomber. You know, when somebody accidentally kills somebody in their car, they don't say the car killed somebody. They say the driver. But yet, when somebody loses their mind and they decide to kill a whole bunch of people with a gun, then somehow politicians say the guns did it. And because that doesn't follow a string of logic and practicality, that's the first thing that should make your antenna go up. Like, are you going after guns or are you going after the people who lose their mind and do evil things like this? And if that's the case, then we need to protect the kids from the people, not citizens from the guns. That's just my take on it. Normally, I'm humorous and casual, but it's not that time for this. This is a time of mourning, and it just disgusts me when politicians try to act like all of a sudden they're concerned and, it's a legislative problem and so on and so forth. And they're not really addressing the real issue. They're not solving the problem. They're not putting safeguards in place outside of just saying stricter gun laws, but can't tell you how those stricter gun laws will solve the issue. Not one has said, oh, by restricting people from getting these would solve the issue. God bless you. God bless those families. It's sad. Find me on Facebook, Twitter, and any of the other social media outlets. You've been listening to Kevin at Kevin's Corner, and we shall see how this all plays out. But I know justice will be served. That young man has done a horrible thing, and I don't know what mind frame he's in. Hopefully, it'll kick in. At 19 years old, you have no idea what you've done. By the time, and I think they will go for the death penalty, by the time he probably gets the death penalty, if that's what they end up getting, he might be old enough to look back and say, I cannot believe that's what I did. Was life really that bad for me to do something like that? But nonetheless, sometimes you commit the crime, you got to do the time. And that is across the board. If that was my own loved one or son or whoever, and he did something like that, as much as I might love that person, I'd say, you know what? Justice has to be served. So God bless the families. God bless America. See you next time, Kevin's Corner.